Anyway, we're going to have a poll. We would like to know what you think is the optimum price to spend on a bike, or a new bike. Is it, around £500 euros a dollars, £1,000 euros a dollars, £2,000 euros a dollars, or
$1 million?
For this video, we are going back to answer a question concerning something that has been with us since the beginning of the Pokemon franchise, dating back to the first generation, originating all the way from Cerulean City. That's right, it is the bicycle. Maybe next time, Misty and Starmie, maybe next time. Okay, here's the context. In most of the main series games, the bicycle is a recurring feature which helps you travel faster than walking. Normally, you are gifted the bike from an NPC somewhere in the game, just like any other item. But back in Generation 1, you instead find that the bike is listed as an item for sale within a bike shop. But here's the catch. It costs a whopping 1 million Pokédollars. Yet strangely, the man is willing to give it to you for absolutely free if you give him a bike voucher. That's a $1 million discount. Now, is that the world's greatest promotional offer, or what? Obviously, this makes zero justifiable sense in universe, and there are no shortage of jokes regarding this. Even the Pokemon company itself is self-aware of this, as they once created a special replica of the bike and called it the 1 million yen bicycle, which was, just like its in-game counterpart, given away for free in a lucky draw. Though you can't even ride this bike, it's strictly a display item. As funny as this was though, the bike being a purchasable item did have consequences on players. There are some people out there who did believe this bike was purchasable and never figured out how to get it. So why go through all this? Have you ever stopped to think about why the game's designers decided to implement the bicycle in this way? Why show off an item in a shop for a ridiculously huge price only to make it available for free anyway? Why not just give it to you directly? So, to you, my dear viewer, let's play a game. Before I continue on with my explanation, how about you try to think like a game designer for a bit? Try to think about what is the logic and reasoning behind this particular design choice. But before you start, I must first provide you with a crucial piece of preliminary information in order to make your hypothesis fair. This bicycle is absolutely impossible to purchase. The internal cap on the money in this game is 999,999, which means even if you max out your money via cheats, glitches, or plain old farming, you can never obtain enough money to meet the purchase price. No matter how many nuggets you clone and sell, you can never break past this internal cap. The only way to make obtaining that amount of money possible is to go in and rewrite the game's code to change that internal value. It's not as simple as abusing an in-game exploit or downloading a ROM hack. This is something completely out of the game's boundaries entirely. But even if you manage to edit the code to allow you to have 1 million, you still cannot buy this bicycle. If you try to select the bicycle option in the store menu, the game still acts as if you don't have enough money. The store clerk will still give you the same rejection message and say you cannot afford it. Okay, that's the information. Now, onwards to you, my dear viewer. With this key information in hand, I invite you to puzzle this out. If you were a game designer, why would you set an unpurchasable item in the store only to give it away for free in exchange for another item? Let's have a quick tea break while you think this over. About, say, 30 seconds?
Go get some snacks. Perhaps a carbonated soda. I hope they have ices.
I've chosen the large tub.
My nipples look like milk duds.
I've got some yellow liquid for your popcorn. And it's non-dairy.
There's nothing quite like a freshly brewed pot of hojicha. So, got your answer? Got your carbonated soda? Don't worry, I won't fault you if you decide to pause the video to think. The answer is because this overpriced bicycle is an optional side quest. For those who guessed right, great job! If I could, I would brew you a pot of tea as a prize. I'd personally recommend a lovely emerald green sencha, or perhaps a delightfully smoky iribancha. But if you guessed wrong, then don't worry. Feel free to explain your own logic in a comment while I explain mine. Now, the confusion you might have is understandable. Side quests in most modern games look very different. You'll typically find an NPC, usually with a quest marker. They will request something from you, the objective gets recorded in a convenient tracker, then you go off to do the thing which they asked you to do. Or just forget it and have it sit awkwardly in the quest tracker. But the thing is, side quests didn't always used to look like this. They evolved into their current form out of necessity. Back in the past, things were a lot simpler. Optional side quests were usually minimalistic and few in number, usually consisting of 1 to 2 steps, and were typically simple tasks such as giving an object to a certain NPC. So there was no need for this. In fact, many games back then didn't usually have side quests because they were often straightforward game experiences. And even if they did, designers hadn't started thinking of a good way to implement a complex cutscene tracker system yet. As the years passed, games would gradually grow more complex and begin packing in increasing amounts of content. Too much content to reasonably demand an average player to actually remember, so designers needed to figure out a reasonable way to keep track of things. The side quest systems we are familiar with now came to exist after years of iteration from multiple games copying the UI from other successful games, gradually attempting to improve their variant of the system along the way. So, for the few games that did need to implement side quests, designers resorted to other methods. These side quests would end up being integrated into the game world in a more natural, in-universe fashion, and would stand out in some way to make it clear to the player that they need to do something. Players were expected to just remember the oddity, and when they later discover a solution, they need to make a logical deduction to solve the side quest. In this case, when players first enter Cerulean City, they will explore and likely discover the bike store, because there's only like 4 buildings you can enter in this place. There, they will see a bike on sale, and the ridiculous 1 million price tag will catch their attention. They might try to gather money for it, but because the only way to earn money is via trainer battles or selling items, there is no way to realistically earn enough money at this stage of the game to come anywhere close to the 1 million price tag. The only plausible option is to spend hours exploiting the infinite nugget exploit in Fire Red and Leaf Green. But even if you do so, you still cannot obtain the $1 million required to buy it. And since the players cannot buy it, they will have a good chance of remembering this for a short to medium amount of time. So, later, when they explore Vermilion City and find the bike voucher from the chairman, they can make the logical conclusion to return back to the Cerulean bike store. This is why the bicycle has the $1 million price tag. Putting the bicycle on sale is a natural way to hide the bike within the game world. And 1 million not only prevents you from buying it, but also makes it immediately memorable as a goal, because 1 million is a very big number. It then gets players thinking about a potential solution to bypass this. For what this is worth, this isn't the only instance of using a comically giant price tag to trigger specific player behavior or thinking. Another Pokemon-related example comes from Gold and Silver, where a suspicious man sells you an unpurchasable Slowpoke tail for 1 million outside of Union Cave. Although in this case, the memorably high price tag was instead used for the sake of narrative foreshadowing. In the very next town after the cave, you discover Team Rocket cutting Slowpoke tails, allowing a player to make that simple logical connection. Later in the game, you can actually purchase multiple Slowpoke tails from the Mahogany Town souvenir store for a more reasonable $9,800, which hints at Team Rocket activity within the town. Although, let's be real, Team Rocket are kind of laughably bad at disguising themselves. Like, look at their antenna. After Lance comes, literally hyper beams a man into a wall, and you clear out the rocket base, the store gets replaced by an old lady who sells normal items again, and the Slowpoke tail is no longer available to be obtained. That said, it's completely fine to miss this, because the tail doesn't actually do anything, meaning they only exist for for this one narrative function. In fact, they are so unnecessary that the remakes removed them entirely, although they still exist in the game data and have art assets. Another instance of this comes from Super Paper Mario. In one chapter, Mario is conned by chapter villain Mimi into a 1 million rupee debt and is sentenced to hard labor to repay it. To earn rubies, Mario must jump and punch a block repeatedly, which requires several 100,000 jump inputs. This level diverges from traditional Mario formula because it isn't about reaching the end of a stage. Instead, there is no platforming, no enemies, and you are stuck within a small area of a mansion, with the intended way to progress being to grind rubies, explore the mansion, talk to and bribe NPCs, and gain access to more efficient forms of earning rubies. It's more akin to something you would expect from an RPG game. Eventually, you will discover Mimi's Rubee Vault and figure out a way to break in and steal 1 million rubies, allowing you to pay off your debt and finish the chapter. This example closely resembles the bike side quest more than the Slowpoke Tail example does. It sets a shockingly huge number and gives you zero reasonable way to meet said number, which encourages players to soon start thinking out of the box and figure out an alternative solution. And just like the bike, there is a failsafe. Although this one is more formally well designed. Even if you were to manually work off the 1 million rupee debt legitimately, you still cannot clear the level because the gold clear block spawns behind metal bars. The only way to get past these bars is to obtain a pixel that gives you the power to flatten yourself, which you will find as part of exploring the mansion and serves as the method you use to sneak past the vault security system. Essentially, even if you try to work off the debt, you still need to explore part of the mansion anyway in order to complete the level, meaning that you, as a player, did at least make an attempt to try and figure out an alternative solution and did not exclusively spend 11 hours of your life doing nothing except run on a hamster wheel. To reinforce the impossibility of manual repayment, the debt counter apparently stops counting down after a certain point if you attempt to make small micro-installment payments. You need to make a single 1 million rupee payment and completely clear the debt in one indisputable go. Otherwise, you are trapped forever. Mimi is truly the most evil among all Mario villains. Even Bowser wouldn't stoop so low. This is a design failsafe which presents the illusion of two solutions, but in truth, it's more of 1.5 solutions. The mandatory requirement to complete the level is needing to explore the mansion. And if you've decided to explore the mansion, you are already in the mindset of trying to look for a way to cheat the debt. However, it still keeps the solution of manually grinding rubies open as a hypothetical option, but uses game mechanics to heavily discourage the player from wasting time on grinding like this. Meaning that even if you explored the mansion but failed to solve the vault's puzzle somehow, you can still advance the game. Personally, I respect the decision to allow grinding as a viable solution, but I'd personally prefer if they make grinding completely impossible instead of only discouraging it, because I don't consider grinding to be meaningful gameplay. I will also add that I play Genshin Impact, where there is a lot of grinding, so I acknowledge I am being quite hypocritical regarding this. The Pokemon's bike failsafe is the money cap of 999,999, which makes purchasing impossible. And even if you rewrite the code to change the money limit, the game still proceeds as if you don't have enough money, meaning you can only get the bike by presenting the voucher. This part of the failsafe is more unintentional, because the developers literally did not program any data to support this outcome, and they have no reason to do so, because the cap makes this impossible to begin with, so there's no point wasting developer resources on this. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking that this side quest is obtuse and stupid, or are still doubtful of this being a side quest. So let me elaborate on another important trait of a side quest, being that they are all optional side content. Personally, I agree with you that this whole bike side quest and its solution are kind of silly. However, it ultimately didn't matter because the bike is well and truly optional. It doesn't matter if the player doesn't get the bicycle. In Generation 1, the bike serves only two purposes: faster move speed and letting you access Cycling Road. However, neither are mandatory. To progress through the game, the player needs to move from Celadon to Fuchsia City. Cycling Road is the fastest path to get there, but it isn't the only path. You can also backtrack to Lavender Town and head south, passing through routes 12 to 15. Without the bicycle, you can still progress through the game via this path. Although the path here is much longer, involves more walking, trainer fights, tall grass, and an annoying mini maze. The bicycle merely unlocks a massive shortcut. This is why there are two Snorlaxes in the game. They both serve as the same check, blocking off both paths to Fuchsia, ensuring that a player completes the Rocket Hideout and the Pokemon Tower before they progress to the 5th badge. The red and blue bicycle, being a missable side quest reward, is ultimately fine because it isn't mandatory to progress. This is why later games handle the bicycle differently. They became increasingly mandatory for use in overworld travel, so the game needed to give it to the player. In the Hoenn games, the Mach and Aqua bikes were used for exploring many routes, but weren't strictly mandatory for progression, so the bike store was placed in an obvious location and given to you for free, but players could still safely skip it. In Sinnoh, the bicycle is used as a check to ensure that the player has obtained the 2nd badge and completed the Team Galactic building, as the exit from Eterna is a Cycling Road. Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet all integrate their bicycles directly into their exploration, so they all also need to guarantee that you get them. And I think that just about covers everything there is to say about the bicycle's strange $1 million price tag. To recap, the $1 million bicycle is an optional side quest. The $1 million price tag not only makes it totally impossible to obtain, but also makes it stand out as both memorable and unusual, pushing players to remember this item and try to search for an alternative way to get around the price tag. This was a necessary limitation due to the nature of side quest design in the past, as gaming in general had not yet advanced far enough to both require and figure out a proper side quest management system. And ultimately, even if players never figured out how to obtain the $1 million bicycle, it is not a huge issue, because the bicycle only acts as a convenience and opens Cycling Road as a shortcut, and is not mandatory to complete the game. Future games will later make the bicycle required for overworld exploration, so they instead make it mandatory and unmissable to obtain instead. And to an extent, it's entirely plausible that the designers might also have felt this was a really poor way to implement a video game side quest to begin with. And thus concludes the longest video you have ever seen from anybody regarding an overpriced bicycle in a video game. Did you have fun watching it? If so, then leave me a like to show your appreciation, because it satisfies the monkey part of my brain to see big numbers go up. If you've enjoyed listening to me ramble about other game design oddities, then here is another video. If not, then I shall bid you farewell and have a good night. I'll see you next time.